Western Australia is 1/3 the size of Australia. It's about 2.5 million square kilometres in size, and its capital is Perth, named after Perth in Scotland. It's the most isolated city in the world. We're going to have a look at what makes Perth Perth, some of its history and what there is to see today. In 1829 the English arrived in WA to set up a free settlement. Perth was the administrative centre, while Fremantle was the port. On the 12th of August 1829, Mrs. Helen Dance cut a tree down just near where the Perth Town Hall is today and declared the site as Perth. In the early days, Perth really struggled to survive, till the convicts that they asked for started to arrive in 1850. This garden area is a favourite place for weddings on the weekends, but its first use was actually as a clay pit. From here, they dug out the clay to build the bricks to build the buildings in the city. When that ran out, they then turned it into a garden and called it Queen's Gardens. Not a lot of people know, but this bench was actually in the hit movie Notting Hill. A fella here in Perth wanted to propose to his girlfriend, and she was a mad Hugh Grant fan with the movie Notting Hill. So he went to England, bought the bench and brought it back here, brought his girlfriend down, sat her on the bench and proposed to her. If you want to know the answer, you're going to have to do one of my tours. This statue of Peter Pan is one of the 4 authorised statues of Peter Pan, built by the same sculptor that built the original one in Kensington Gardens in London. A lot of the old buildings of Perth have been pulled down in the name of progress. In Fremantle, in the 1960s, the Lord Mayor came up with this really good idea of not pulling them down, keeping them for the future. Unfortunately in Perth it took 20 years for the Lord Mayor to come up with the same idea, so a lot of the old buildings are now gone. But we're going to have a look around and see what's left and have a look at some of the buildings that were built by the convicts. The town hall was built in 1867. It was made from the clay that was dug up at Queen's Gardens. Markets used to be held in the area underneath. These days it's a popular place for weddings, banquets and public functions. It's also the place where Mrs. Dance cut down the tree. As the city began to grow, the Little Perth station needed to go. They needed a newer, bigger, better facility. So between 1893 and 1894 they built this one, and it stood here pretty much as it did ever since, apart from the conversion to electric trains in 91. The train to Bunbury in the southwest leaves from here as well. The building is now on the State Heritage List, which means it's going to be here for a very long time. The railway line has always divided the city, so they wanted to build a bridge to get around the problem. Rumour has it had a lot to do with the beer. The brewery was down by the river, and over at Northbridge is where a lot of the pubs were, and they couldn't get the beer from one side of the railway line to the other. If they had built the bridge to go straight up and back down again, it would have been too steep for the horses to get the carts up, and if they did, they'd never stop when they come down the other side. So in 1904 they built this bridge into this shape and called it the Horseshoe Bridge. When you walk out of the train station, you walk across the road into Forest Place and the shopping area. Over the road from the train station is this. This is something apparently that is called modern art. It was the winner of a worldwide competition and it costs $1 million. But most of it have just called it the cactus. One of the things a lot of the tourists tell me they like about Perth is that all the shopping isn't in one area. In other places of the world, you have to walk from one street to another to find different shops, where here, everything is in the same area. Another icon of the city is London Court. It runs between Hay Street and St Georges Terrace. It's a Tudor-style building built in 1837 by a wealthy gold businessman. Originally, the arcade had 24 residential flats and 53 shops and 55 offices. Now it's just shops. The local kids call it Diagon Alley from Harry Potter. And you've got St George up there slaying the dragon every quarter hour. This is the Perth City Council building. It's been here since the early 1960s. They were going to pull it down a few years ago, but then they changed their mind. It's one of the few 1960s styles buildings left in Perth, so they smartened it up and turned it into a feature. At night is the best time to see it, with the 22,000 LED lights on. At the bottom of Barrett Street is the Barrett Street jetties. In the middle of that is the bell tower. The bell tower has the 12 bells of St Martin's in the Field in London. They were given to us for our bicentenary. In the meantime, a couple of other mining companies got together and made some more bells and made a total of 18 bells, and it made it the world's largest change ringing bells musical instrument. Somebody else has built a tower now and they've got 20 bells in it, so they've got the record. Also inside there's the Clockwork Museum, which is actually kind of interesting to have a look at, as well as seeing the bells of course. The Barrett Square was pretty important in its time. Anything that came into Fremantle on the big ships was transferred onto boats or barges and then shipped upriver to the Barrett Square. From there they were transferred up Barrett Street into the shops of Perth. Anything that was grown in the farming area to the east of Perth was brought down the river to the Barrett Square and then brought into the shops the same way. Today from here you can get the ferry that goes to South Perth and the zoo, get the boat that goes to Rottnest, or take a river cruise upriver to the wineries of the Swan Valley or down to Fremantle. They give a very good commentary on the way to Freo of all the juicy stuff from the people of Millionaires Road, as well as all the other interesting places you slowly cruise past. This land here is all reclaimed. It was once all part of the river, but was filled in during the 50s to build the freeway system and put in car parks. It's now being changed to create a new area for hotels, restaurants and entertainment. This is the Barracks Arch. It's at the top end of town near Kings Park. I've heard some people say they reckon it was the entrance to a wall that went round the city. There was never a wall that went round the city. It was actually the place where the pensioner guards used to live. It was originally built in 1866 to house the part-time guards and their families that came out from London to guard the convicts. It had two wings coming off it at a 45-degree angle. During the 60s, the government wanted to put in the freeway and they were going to pull the whole lot down. And the local people said, well, you can't pull it down, it's part of our history. So the government said, well, we'll pull down the two wings that came off it at 45-degree angle, knock them down and we'll leave the arch. Now they thought they could leave it for 3-4 months and then knock it down because the people would all forget about it. But clearly, as you can see, people haven't forgotten. That concrete building behind me is our banana factory. In there we have trained monkeys who answer phones, throw things at each other, open and close doors and just basically be a nuisance. That's our Parliament House. From the Harvest Terrace side of the building, this was the original Parliament House. Construction started in 1902, now it's the back entrance. In 1958, they started construction on the east side of the building, and this has now become the main entrance into Parliament House. So now you can see why the politicians wanted to get rid of the arch, because they wanted to see the view. But clearly the people didn't want to see the politicians. On the corner of Barrett Street and St Georges Terrace is a statue of Alexander Forrest. He'd done a lot of exploring and surveying around the northern parts of the state. He also spent some time in politics, which included being the Lord Mayor of Perth. We'll see his brother shortly up in Kings Park. Do you know why St Georges Terrace and Adelaide Terrace has this dog leg in it? This is John Septimus Roe. He was the Surveyor General of Perth. It was his job to plan out how Perth was going to look. He didn't plan it overly well. St George's Terrace up there was already in, and he had a house here on the corner. He wanted to put in a new road, the road behind me, Adelaide Terrace. Came home from work one day and said to the missus, got some bad news. Going to put another road in and it's going to go through your rose garden. And she said, you're not touching my rose garden. So they had to put a dog leg in the road to get around the rose garden, and the dog leg's still here. There are heaps of statues around the city, too many to list here, and they've all got their own little stories. Some have some weird meanings, like Mick Jagger's lips, and Marilyn Monroe's dress as the awning over the entrance to the QV1 building, and the doors are her legs. Then some have too much thought into them. These are the business kangaroos. You can tell they're business kangaroos because they're carrying briefcases. They've been down in the city doing their business and now they're heading back up to Kings Park for the night. Kings Park is the place that eventually everyone's going to come to. Whether it's to kick a ball around, have a picnic, sit under a tree, read a book. But the main thing people come here for is the view. It's about 1,000 acres or 400 hectares in size. It's the largest national park inside a capital city. A lot of people say that Central Park in America is bigger, but that's only 843 acres and it's all man-made. This park is about 1/3 manicured lawns and the rest is all natural bush. And we got this bloke to thank for it. This is John Forrest. He was the one who originally said to keep this area for the future. Who would have thought we would have had a greenie way back in the 1900s? He was the first Premier of WA after the states became government under the One Government in 1901. He was also in a number of expeditions with his brother Alexander, who we saw down in Perth. This bloke was one of the many people that were really important in making WA what it is today. Well, that's it for Perth. There's a lot more to see and do around here. I've only just scratched the surface. A lot of overseas tourists tell me they didn't realise there was so much here. So why don't you start planning your next trip now? And if you're a local, get out and smell the roses. You're sitting on a secret and a lot of people don't even know about it. In the meantime, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the scenery.